going to be a big quarterback matchup, going to be a big defensive matchup, all that 3:30 Eastern time at Neyland Stadium, CBS game of the week. And, of course, we'll have all that coverage at Volquest.com. From the Texas A&M side, that's going to be at TexAgs.com. And here to join us on the Volquest podcast is David Nuno. And really appreciate you, David, joining the show. Huge game coming up, and obviously it's a big one for Tennessee. It's going to be a big one for Texas A&M coming off that home loss to Alabama. What's this kind of feel like, this matchup here in the early week as Texas A&M will head to Knoxville for what should be a good one?
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on, and I apologize if the lighting doesn't look too good here. Look, this is a fork in the road moment for Texas A&M. There's no doubt about that. I know Tennessee still has a chance to really rectify their season, but A&M hasn't won a road game since a real road game since Missouri 2021. A&M has not shown an ability to stop an aerial attack. Tennessee can do that. Tennessee's great at home. Tennessee can run the ball well, something that A&M has done phenomenally stopping the run this year. All that being said, it is a huge moment for A&M because, you lost to Miami on the road early on trying to figure out your defense. You thought you got to figure it out. But then Jalen Milroe looks like Tom Brady connecting with Randy Moss, connecting every pass he needed to do, especially down the field. So what Joe Milton and that offense can certainly do, I think it's very scary for A&M. But I do think if they are able to find a way to win this game, most of everything we had envisioned for this program for this year in particular is still there. There is still a world where this team could win 9 or 10 games in the regular season. But if you don't win on the road in the SEC, it ain't happening. You know that. And that's something that's going to be a huge, huge challenge for sure.
David, I'm curious about this A&M defense. I mean, we know about the defensive front and how good they are. I was a little surprised at how crowded the box was defensively. They didn't, there were a lot of single safety high looks for Jalen Milroe. I thought made the field a little easier to read. What's the story on the A&M secondary? And kind of how have they played, the pass game throughout the year?
They've struggled. They have absolutely struggled. And their only 2 tests have come against, I thought Arkansas would be a test, but that offensive line was no match for the A&M defensive front, right? So when they're able to put on pressure the way they were able to do in the first half of the Alabama game, the way they did in the Auburn game, the Arkansas game, it's really hard to throw on this team when they're able to do that. But as you saw, Alabama, they made some changes. They were able to, A&M still got in the backfield. They still had a really good second half getting to the quarterback. But the secondary has struggled. And it has struggled against Miami, where Tyler Van Dyke, who they did not pressure at all. He was sacked twice in that game, but it's not the same defense that you've seen since then. Tyler Van Dyke just was able to dink and dunk as much as he wanted. And A&M's defense had a hard time tackling at that point. There was a lot of, you didn't see a lot of the gang tackling you've seen since that point. So if you're Tennessee, and I know you can run the ball well, but I'm throwing on that secondary until they prove they can stop it. The thing is, and I caught this note, I think Joe Milton's only been sacked 5 times this year. I know they haven't taken on a caliber of defensive front that A&M brings, but that is something to watch out for because if A&M is not able to get to Joe Milton, I don't know what that secondary is going to be able to do.
David, has there been a common thread in these road losses over the last couple of years for the streak to be as long as it has at this point? Have they played out in a similar fashion, or has it just been completely different game in and game out?
Well, look, this is not the same team from 2021. The team with 2021 was also on a backup quarterback, but that team was built differently. Last year was a bunch of young players. I mean, that's what you had on the road. A lot of these guys that are starring this year were absolutely too young for the big moment, and you had key injuries. You had key injury to your starting quarterback, which say what you want about Max or say what you want about Haynes King. When you go into a season thinking that's going to be your guy and it goes to the next option for whatever reason, Haynes was initially benched, then Max broke his finger, or his wrist, I should say, and then you have to go with Connor Wigman. But Haynes goes in for a little bit. The changing of the guard certainly has hurt them on the road. I asked Jimbo Fisher about that today, and he says you need a veteran team in the SEC to win on the road, a team that doesn't make the mistakes that A&M has made on several occasions. So to me, it's about cleaning up some of those mistakes. Look, there's no doubt about it. I think this team has this is the biggest moment of the season for them because of what I illustrated earlier. But I think they can get to the quarterback in this game. How many times? I don't know. I don't know if we're going to see the 7-7-6 that we've seen in the last 3 SEC games for Texas A&M, 7 sacks, 6 sacks. But if they can get to Joe Milton, then I think it gives them a chance to win on the road, to quiet the crowd. But again, they've made too many mistakes on the road through, even in Miami this year.
David, what's been the biggest difference with the offense and Bobby Petrino with the court after the energy to Wegman and Johnson coming in? Has it been dramatic or, really conservative or not so much?
Hard to say, because when Wegman goes down, look, Max Johnson, I think every team in the SEC would love to have Max Johnson as their backup quarterback. He is that good. He can start on a lot of SEC teams. He's a good quarterback. I think Connor Wegman has the ability to potentially be great. You can win because of Connor. You win with Max, and that's been the biggest drop-off. Look, he holds onto the ball too much. And Alabama, who has a salty defensive line, who came into that game with something to prove because they had read the press clippings all about A&M's defensive line, they got after to Max in the second half, and he held onto the ball too long. That's been the biggest issue. Look, the offense is better than it was last year for multiple reasons. But it's still not groundbreaking, at least in the SEC. Like, it's still managing to score about 24 points a game in SEC play. It needs to be better than that. It needs to be, especially when you go to Tennessee, a team that is conditioned and can win a shootout. I don't know if A&M's built that way. And if it goes to a shootout, I don't know if A&M is going to be able to match the wits of a Tennessee. So that's why you want it to not be and move that offense. They've got a ways to go, but they're certainly better than they were last year.
David, you go from worst to first as of right now through 6 games in the SEC in terms of rush defense, allowing, I think, 208 yards on the ground on average a game last year to 84 this year. A lot of football left to be played, but what's been the biggest difference? I mean, why the sudden change? But really across the board, I mean, getting after the quarterback as well, already 26 sacks, only did 19 a season ago.
Yeah, I'm going to give props to DJ Durkin, who's gotten a lot of flack, especially for the way the secondary is played. But he became the linebackers coach. All right. So I think that has helped a lot. Our linebacker play has been significantly better than it was last year, with a little bit of a personnel change. Torian York is a freshman that a lot of people didn't know about, not one of the 5 stars that everybody talks about. They thought they had Harold Perkins a couple years ago. They thought they had other players, right? So the fact that Torian has been able to become a starter and an integral part of what those linebackers do, that's part of it. The other part is McKinley Jackson's healthy all year this year. He was only healthy for part of the year last year. And a gentleman you guys all know, Walter Nolan, is a grown man, right? You get Walter Nolan in there with his ability to get to the quarterback, his ability to plug in. That is part of the reason. You've seen the maturation. We talked about this being a really young team on the road last year. Well, a lot of those young players were on the defensive line last year, and they all got a lot of, baptism by fire by playing against those SEC teams. They have grown up. Like, they faced Bama, who can run the ball. They faced Auburn, who can run the ball. They've done a really good. They faced Rocket Sanders in Arkansas, and they can run the ball. All 3 of those tests, A&M, at least from stopping the run, have looked really good. Quarterbacks haven't been able to run on them either. Again, the problem has just been, can they cover somebody? And if the defensive line isn't getting to quarterbacks, that's where the big issue is.
David, two questions here from me. One, how much does Max being the quarterback on the road, given his experience in the SEC as a starting quarterback, how much comfortability does that give the offense in terms of managing a crowd? Because he's played in a bunch of different venues, obviously, in this league. And 2, DJ Durkin has gone up against Josh Heupel's offense before. He did that at Ole Miss 2 years ago in a win in Knoxville. How much advantage is it, do you think, for this A&M defense in terms of preparation for Tennessee's uniqueness, given that DJ Durkin has already called a game against it once?
Look, DJ Durkin gets a lot of flack, as we've already touched on. But one thing that we learned about that Ole Miss defense, in year 1 at Ole Miss, that defense was a train wreck. In year 2, they struggled in the very first couple of games of the season. I think that Arkansas game, they gave up like 52 points, I think it was, or something close to that amount. And then they became a really good defense throughout without the talent that A&M has on this year's team. I think that goes a long way as this defense continues to play in the familiarity with some of the opponents in the SEC, Tennessee being one of them. I think that does go a long way. Different Tennessee team, obviously. When it comes to Max Johnson, that is where you, again, talk about having a backup quarterback who could start on a lot of programs, who has won on the road, who has taken on these tough environments. This will not be strange for Max Johnson, who has won. And honestly, like he's had a couple turnovers the last few weeks, but since he's last season at LSU and these last couple of years here at A&M, He's protected the football very well. Had a bad interception last week against Alabama, which might have been the game changer. I'll be interested, though, because Alabama comes in here and they have 8 false starts. They have 11 penalties, and the crowd had a lot to do with that. The 12th man was really loud. They found a way to win the game. I expect a similar atmosphere there when we go to Neyland, and I think Max has got the temperament to handle that. It's going to be everybody else with him. Can they handle it? And the bottom line is, if you can't protect Max Johnson, if you cannot protect them, they're going to struggle. And I think that's one area that they have to get better at. They will not face a defensive front as good as Bama's this year, although I'm not trying to give discredit to any of the teams they're about to face. The way Alabama played that last game, especially in the second half, that was out of this world good.
You mentioned Saturday is potentially a fork in the road. After a 5-win season last year, kind of where do things sit with Jimbo, and I guess the opinion on him and what he's built there, kind of what it looks like moving forward?
It's all TBD, guys. Like, look, everybody wanted him fired last year in the SEC. We all know the contract, what it is. This guy recruits at an extremely high level, top 5, top 10 level. Every year, like these last couple of years, because I mean, this program was ascending. Let's not forget he won 9 twice before the 2020 season, where they went 9-1. Their only loss being to Alabama. So there was an ascension. The next year, they lost a lot of seniors, and they had a changing of the guard at quarterback, and he gets hurt, and it goes downhill. And last year was a comedy of errors, really was. And I think it's happening in the middle of this NIL world, transfer world, where you got these young players that don't, they walk on water, and you had some dudes on that program that just didn't fit the culture that they were trying to establish. Fast forward to this year, look. We expect no less than 9 or 8 wins this year, and that's low. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, this program did not sign up for 9 or 8 wins. There keeps being this, but what if? But what if you get a defensive line that can stop the run? Well, they answer that what if. What if you can get an offense that moves the ball? Well, for a while before the second half of the Alabama game, it felt like you were moving in that direction with Bobby Petrino. Well, what if? And now the newest what ifs are: can you protect Max Johnson and not lose another quarterback? And what if you had a secondary that worked? Jimbo's got more grace than people think because of that contract and because of his ability to recruit. But let's be honest, every program in the SEC, you can only have so many down years, right? Like, every coach, if it doesn't look like it's going to happen for Alabama, but if Alabama went 7-5 this year, at one point some people were saying that was a possibility. Doesn't look like it anymore because they are Alabama. People are going to be saying, has the game passed by Nick Saban? Jimbo's contract is a part of the reason he's still here. The other part is that guy recruits at an elite level. He has won a national championship. He's got the 4th best. A&M, since entering the SEC, has the 4th best record in the entire conference since joining. They just have nothing to show for it. No conference championships, no division championships. Things have to change. I just don't know, unless it's another bottom-out season, that we're going to be talking about that, at least here locally.
And David, last thing from me, just Bobby Petrino was probably that hire probably generated as many headlines as any assistant coach in the country last winter. What's the impact of that hire been like? And maybe is it not fair because of the quarterback injuries to even kind of talk about it?
Well, I mean, look, let's play this game for a minute. I know that you guys were pretty happy with the quarterback room there in Tennessee, but you can look at almost any team in the country, right? Alabama has some quarterback issues, but if Tyler Buchner was their starting quarterback, are they a potentially 11-win team? I don't think so. You look at most teams in the SEC or most teams in the country that are on their backup quarterback, their chances of winning 8 or 9 games or 10 games goes out the window. I think with Max Johnson, you still have a chance for that, but the offense isn't a finished product. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter if it's a finished product. It wasn't a finished product in 21. It wasn't a finished product in 22. Unfortunately, it's not a finished product here in 23. You got to get through that. You got to figure out why your quarterbacks keep getting hurt and why they're getting hurt early on. You've got to protect your quarterbacks. The offense is better than it was last year, but it was so bad last year. That's the bare minimum. I wish we were having this conversation leading into the Bama game because everything felt much better. But you know how it is. You lose a game, the water tastes bad, the coffee's cold.
Yeah.
You get more
we know how
lights.
it is.
Yeah. So sitting here today, I mean, look, I think it's better. I like the play calling better. It's more creative. You just lost to a team that is having a down year that may still win 11 games. Or may win 10 games at the worst, the way their schedule is going to play out. It doesn't feel as good after that game, but it's certainly, and everybody around the country, especially when Connor was talking about A&M's a different team, and they could potentially still be one of those different teams, but it does start this weekend.
David, great stuff, man. Really appreciate you joining our show and giving us a great perspective of Texas A&M, the secondary, the offensive line, the quarterback, the play calling, all that and more. Should be a good one, 3:30 Eastern Time at Neyland Stadium, the CBS game of the week. And David, from an A&M perspective, what do you guys have going on over there at Texas this weekend or this week?
Well, it's busy. We'll be doing all of our shows. We had Feinbaum on today with his ties in Tennessee. We have Gary Danielson coming on later on in the week. It's just a busy show here at Texas. Well, we do focus 90% of our efforts on A&M, but we do some SEC coverage as well. And Eric, you've been a part of that coverage. So it'll be busy. We'll head out there I think we're flying into Chattanooga on Friday afternoon, and we'll be there ready for the game. And it'll be my first time there. This year, I'm not going on every road trip, but this is one of the ones I said I have to be at. I'm looking forward to it because I've heard so many great things about going there, and I can't wait to see it and see you all too as well.
Absolutely, man. It'll be one for the books. At least that is the hope. David Nuno, TexAgs.com. Appreciate it, man, and we'll see you this weekend.
Thank you, guys.